C'est du mensonge, c'est de la manipulation. Dire que l'armée est en train de tuer les populations, c'est assez faux. Donc nous disons, où sont les États-Unis? Ce sont les mêmes États-Unis qui ont brûlé la Libye. C'est ça. Ce sont les mêmes États-Unis qui ont brûlé la Syrie. C'est ça. Nous le savons très bien. Et en Palestine, ce sont les États-Unis qui ont brûlé la bande de Gaza. Nous ne sommes pas dupes. Nous sommes là pour montrer aux États-Unis que le peuple burkinabé est souverain. Le peuple burkinabé est en train de prendre leur destin en main.
What happens when the United States makes baseless allegations against African nations? Often, these accusations serve to divert attention from issues within the U.S. itself. However, when this tactic was employed against Burkina Faso, calling it a violent state, people protested in the streets, pointing out how individuals are treated in the United States. And the question arose, why does Western media rarely report on the wrongdoings of the U.S., yet frequently spread misinformation to make other nations look bad? Let's find out. In recent months, Burkina Faso has witnessed a surge of public protests that have captivated national and international attention. These demonstrations are fueled by a complex interplay of local grievances and broader geopolitical dynamics, reflecting deep-seated frustrations and a desire for greater sovereignty and justice. But what sparked the protests in Burkina Faso? The immediate trigger for the protests in Burkina Faso was a series of accusations leveled by the United States against the country's armed forces. These accusations were serious and multifaceted, alleging that the Burkinabe military was involved in a range of human rights abuses and other illicit activities. The specifics of these allegations included reports of extrajudicial killings, arbitrary detentions, and torture. Additionally, there were claims of the military engaging in corruption and illicit trade, further tarnishing their reputation both domestically and internationally. For many Burkinabe, these allegations from the United States were not just a critique of their military, but felt like a profound affront to their national dignity. Burkina Faso, a nation with a complex history of colonialism and foreign intervention, viewed these accusations as another instance of external powers meddling in their sovereign affairs. The memory of past interventions and the ongoing challenges of asserting their autonomy in the international arena fueled a collective sentiment of indignation and resistance. The timing of these accusations was also critical. Burkina Faso has been grappling with significant internal challenges, including a persistent insurgency in the Sahel region, which has put immense pressure on the country's military and security forces. In this context, the military is not just seen as a security apparatus, but as a critical institution safeguarding the nation's stability and future. The accusations from the United States, therefore, struck a nerve, as they appeared to undermine the very institution that many Burkinabe view as a bulwark against chaos and disorder. Moreover, how these accusations were presented exacerbated the situation. The U.S. government, through various channels, made these allegations public in a way that seemed to bypass diplomatic norms and protocols. This unilateral approach was perceived as high-handed and disrespectful, adding to the sense of national humiliation. For a country like Burkina Faso, which is striving to assert its place and voice in the global community, such treatment from a powerful nation like the United States was particularly galling. The protests that ensued were, therefore, a complex reaction to a combination of factors. On the surface, they were a direct response to the specific accusations against the military. However, at a deeper level, they reflected a broader frustration with what is seen as a pattern of foreign interference in Burkina Faso's affairs. This interference is not just limited to the United States, but includes other Western nations and international institutions that are often perceived as imposing their will and agendas on the country. These protests were marked by a broad spectrum of participants, including civil society groups, political activists, and ordinary citizens. The demonstrations were not just a display of anger, but also a manifestation of a growing sense of national consciousness and solidarity. Protesters carried banners and chanted slogans that emphasized national pride and sovereignty, making it clear that their grievances were not just about the military accusations, but about a deeper desire for respect and self-determination. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The Burkinabe government, caught in the crossfire, had to navigate a delicate situation. On one hand, it needed to address the serious allegations of human rights abuses and ensure accountability within its military ranks. On the other hand, it had to manage the public outcry and the nationalistic fervor that the accusations had ignited. The government's response included calls for dialogue and a thorough investigation into the allegations, coupled with efforts to reassure the public of its commitment to national sovereignty and dignity. In the international arena, the situation posed a diplomatic challenge. Burkina Faso needed to engage with the United States and other concerned parties to address the allegations while maintaining its stance against what it perceived as unwarranted interference. This required a nuanced approach that balanced accountability with assertiveness in defending the nation's honor. What does this protest show? The accusations against the armed forces have galvanized a wave of nationalistic sentiment. Many Burkinabe view their military as a symbol of national unity and resilience, particularly in a region plagued by instability and external threats. The protests are, in part, a collective assertion of national pride and a rejection of perceived foreign meddling. The protesters argue that the U.S. accusations are not only unfounded, but also hypocritical. They point to the double standards often applied by Western countries, which sometimes overlook or downplay human rights abuses committed by their allies while condemning those of other nations. This perceived injustice has fueled a broader sense of anger and defiance. The protests also reflect broader geopolitical tensions. Many Burkinabe see the U.S. accusations as part of a larger pattern of Western interference in African affairs, reminiscent of colonial-era exploitation and manipulation. This context of historical and ongoing geopolitical struggles adds an extra layer of complexity to the protests. And how have the protests unfolded? The protests have been marked by large, peaceful gatherings in the capital city of Ouagadougou and other major towns. Demonstrators have carried banners and chanted slogans defending their armed forces and denouncing what they perceive as unjust foreign interference. The protests have drawn people from diverse backgrounds, including students, workers, and community leaders, highlighting a widespread sentiment of national solidarity. Despite the predominantly peaceful nature of the protests, there have been some clashes with security forces, resulting in arrests and injuries. The government's response has been mixed, initially attempting to suppress the demonstrations through force but later showing a willingness to engage in dialogue with protest leaders. What will be the impact of these protests? The protests have highlighted deep-seated frustrations with the current government, which many Burkinabe feel has failed to adequately address issues of corruption, inequality, and governance. The demonstrations are not just about defending the armed forces. They are also a broader critique of the political and economic status quo. Burkina Faso is situated in a volatile region, with neighboring countries like Mali and Niger also grappling with internal conflicts and insurgencies. The protests could have spillover effects, influencing political movements and public sentiment in these neighboring states. Moreover, the stability of Burkina Faso is crucial for regional security, making these protests a matter of concern for the broader Sahel region. The protests have strained relations between Burkina Faso and Western countries, particularly the United States. This tension could lead to a realignment of Burkina Faso's foreign policy, potentially driving it closer to other powers such as Russia or China, who are seen as less interventionist in African domestic affairs. This shift could have significant implications for international relations and power dynamics in the region. But why does the U.S. say Burkina Faso does not care about human rights? Is the U.S. fulfilling them? In the heart of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, lies the Buap area, where residents are grappling with a growing concern that threatens their community. For many, the fear of being priced out of their neighborhoods looms large, casting a shadow over their sense of safety and belonging. This fear is not merely a product of economic anxiety. It is deeply intertwined with issues of race, class, and systemic inequality. The Buap area has long been home to a predominantly black population, with deep roots in the local community. However, in recent years, the neighborhood has undergone rapid gentrification, driven by rising property values and influxes of wealthier, predominantly white residents. As a result, longtime residents, many of whom are black, find themselves facing skyrocketing rents and property taxes, forcing them to confront the possibility of displacement. At the heart of this issue is the question of who gets to call Baton Rouge home. For Black residents who have lived in the BUAP area for generations, the neighborhood is more than just a collection of houses. It is a repository of memories, culture, and identity. Yet, as property values rise and developers eye the neighborhood for investment opportunities, the very essence of what makes the BUAP area unique is at risk of being erased. The consequences of displacement extend far beyond the loss of affordable housing. For many residents, the BUAP area represents a haven in a city plagued by racial tensions and economic disparities. It is a place where they feel a sense of community and belonging, a refuge from the systemic injustices that pervade their daily lives. However, as gentrification encroaches, this sense of safety and stability is increasingly under threat. Moreover, the impact of gentrification is not felt equally across racial lines. Studies have shown that Black neighborhoods are disproportionately targeted for gentrification, often resulting in the displacement of longtime residents and the erasure of Black culture and history. In Baton Rouge, this pattern is all too familiar, as Black communities continue to be pushed out of neighborhoods they have called home for generations. The fear of displacement is compounded by broader issues of systemic inequality and racial discrimination. In Baton Rouge, as in many cities across the United States, Black communities have long been marginalized and neglected by policymakers and developers. Decades of disinvestment and neglect have left these communities vulnerable to the forces of gentrification, exacerbating existing disparities in wealth, education, and opportunity. For residents of the BUAP area, the fear of being priced out of their neighborhoods is not just about losing their homes, it is about losing their sense of identity and belonging. It is about fighting to preserve the rich tapestry of Black culture and history that has thrived in Baton Rouge for generations. It is about demanding justice in the face of systemic inequality and discrimination. In response to these concerns, community activists and organizers have mobilized to demand action from city officials and developers. They are calling for policies that prioritize affordable housing and protect longtime residents from displacement. They are advocating for greater transparency and accountability in the development process, ensuring that the voices of those most affected are heard and respected. Ultimately, the fight against gentrification in Baton Rouge is a fight for the soul of the city, a battle to preserve the vibrant diversity and resilience of its communities. It is a reminder that the true measure of a city's success lies not in its gleaming skyscrapers or bustling shopping districts, but in its ability to uplift and empower all of its residents, regardless of race or socioeconomic status. As Baton Rouge grapples with the challenges of gentrification, city leaders and policymakers must listen to the voices of those most affected and take meaningful action to address the root causes of displacement. Only then can the city truly live up to its promise of being a place where all residents can thrive and prosper. But the US won't talk about what's happening in its country and is busy talking about what Burkina Faso is doing. How is the media forced to play a role in this? In an era defined by the rapid flow of information and the proliferation of digital platforms, the role of media in shaping public discourse and influencing societal attitudes has never been more significant. From traditional news outlets to social media networks, media platforms serve as gatekeepers of information, shaping narratives, and shaping public opinion on a wide range of issues. One of the primary functions of the media is to inform and educate the public about current events and issues of importance. Through investigative journalism, in-depth reporting, and analysis, media outlets play a crucial role in uncovering truths, exposing wrongdoing, and holding those in power accountable. Whether it's uncovering government corruption, exposing human rights abuses, or shedding light on environmental injustices, the media serves as a watchdog, shining a light on issues that might otherwise go unnoticed. Moreover, media platforms have the power to amplify the voices of marginalized communities and provide a platform for those whose stories might otherwise be overlooked. Through diverse representation and inclusive storytelling, media outlets can help challenge stereotypes, combat discrimination, and promote understanding and empathy across diverse communities. By giving voice to the voiceless, media platforms can empower individuals to speak out against injustice and advocate for change. In addition to informing and educating the public, media platforms also play a crucial role in shaping public opinion and influencing societal attitudes. Through framing, agenda setting, and selective reporting, media outlets have the power to shape the way audiences perceive and interpret events and issues. Whether it's through sensationalist headlines, biased reporting, or editorializing, media platforms can sway public opinion and shape the political discourse. Furthermore, media platforms have the power to connect people and communities across geographical and cultural boundaries. Through social media networks, online forums, and digital communities, individuals can connect with others who share their interests, beliefs, and experiences, forming virtual communities that transcend traditional boundaries of time and space. This connectivity can foster dialogue, facilitate collaboration, and promote cross-cultural understanding, fostering a sense of global solidarity and empathy. However, alongside its potential to inform, educate, and connect, media platforms also face significant challenges and criticisms. One of the most pressing concerns is the spread of misinformation and disinformation, particularly on social media networks. With the proliferation of fake news, conspiracy theories, and propaganda, media platforms are grappling with the challenge of balancing freedom of expression with the need to combat harmful content and protect the integrity of public discourse. Moreover, media platforms have been criticized for their role in perpetuating stereotypes, reinforcing biases, and amplifying divisive rhetoric. From the portrayal of marginalized communities in mainstream media to the spread of hate speech and extremist propaganda online, media platforms have been accused of exacerbating social tensions and fueling polarization. In an increasingly fragmented media landscape, where audiences can curate their news feeds and filter bubbles, media platforms risk further entrenching echo chambers and reinforcing existing divisions. In response to these challenges, media platforms must strive to uphold the highest standards of journalistic integrity, accuracy, and accountability. By investing in fact-checking, editorial oversight, and transparency, media outlets can help build trust with their audiences and combat the spread of misinformation and disinformation. Moreover, media platforms must prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in their reporting and representation, ensuring that all voices are heard and all perspectives are considered. Ultimately, the role of media in society is multifaceted and complex, encompassing functions of informing, educating, connecting, and influencing. As we navigate the challenges and opportunities of the digital age, media platforms must remain vigilant in upholding their responsibilities to the public interest, promoting truth, accuracy, and accountability, and fostering a vibrant and inclusive public sphere where all voices are heard and respected. We all know how the US media is mostly biased, and it doesn't show people what is happening in the US. Doesn't this highlight double standards as well? In global affairs and media coverage, the phenomenon of double standards is a pervasive and deeply troubling issue. From the way conflicts are reported to the treatment of different countries by the international community, double standards often manifest in biased narratives and unequal treatment, undermining efforts for fairness, justice, and equality on the world stage. One of the most glaring examples of double standards is evident in the way Western media outlets and policymakers frame conflicts and crises around the world. Oftentimes, conflicts in certain regions, particularly those in the global South, are portrayed in simplistic and one-sided terms, with little nuance or context provided. This selective reporting not only distorts the reality on the ground, but also perpetuates harmful stereotypes and biases about certain cultures and peoples. For example, conflicts in the Middle East and Africa are often framed as inherently violent and chaotic, perpetuating stereotypes of backward and uncivilized societies. Meanwhile, conflicts in Western countries or those involving Western actors are often portrayed in a more sympathetic light, with greater emphasis placed on the complexities and nuances of the situation. This disparity in coverage not only skews public perception, but also influences policy decisions and international interventions, often to the detriment of marginalized communities. Moreover, double standards are evident in the way the international community responds to human rights abuses and violations of international law. While certain countries are quick to condemn human rights abuses in other parts of the world, they often turn a blind eye to similar abuses committed by their allies or trading partners. This selective outrage undermines the credibility of international human rights mechanisms and perpetuates a culture of impunity for those in power. For example, the United States and other Western countries have been vocal in condemning human rights abuses in countries such as Iran, North Korea, and Venezuela, while turning a blind eye to similar abuses committed by their allies such as Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Egypt. This hypocrisy undermines efforts to hold perpetrators of human rights abuses accountable and erodes trust in the international human rights framework. Furthermore, double standards are evident in the way economic and trade policies are implemented by powerful countries and international institutions. While Western countries espouse the virtues of free trade and open markets, they often engage in protectionist policies and trade practices that disadvantage developing countries and perpetuate global inequalities. This asymmetry in economic relations reinforces patterns of exploitation and dependency, perpetuating cycles of poverty and underdevelopment. For example, agricultural subsidies in Western countries often flood global markets with cheap produce, undercutting local farmers in developing countries and undermining their livelihoods. Similarly, intellectual property rights regimes favor Western corporations at the expense of indigenous knowledge and traditional practices in the global South, further entrenching patterns of economic inequality and dependency. In addition to economic double standards, there are also double standards evident in the treatment of migrants and refugees by Western countries. While Western countries often tout their commitment to human rights and humanitarianism, they frequently adopt policies that criminalize and demonize migrants and refugees, portraying them as threats to national security and social cohesion. For example, the European Union's response to the migrant crisis in the Mediterranean has been characterized by a fortress mentality, with member states prioritizing border security over humanitarian considerations. Similarly, the United States' policy of family separation at the southern border and its treatment of asylum seekers have been widely condemned as violations of international law and basic human rights. So, when the people of Burkina Faso protest and say the US must look at what it's doing before making allegations about any other nation, it is right. Do you think the US must look at what it is doing before questioning nations like Burkina Faso? Why does the media not show what's happening in the US? Let us know in the comment section. Do you think they are forced? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.